We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. We exist where silence is demanded and truth is punished. We speak when governments rewrite history before the ink is dry. And today, we speak because the mask is slipping inside the Republican Party. For the first time in years, a wave of GOP leaders is breaking away from Donald Trump, not in whispers, not in private memos, but in full public revolt. The reason? Trump's obsession with Greenland, his reckless talk of annexation, and his advisor Stephen Miller's imperial fantasy of turning allies into colonies. Yes, you heard that right. Greenland, the autonomous Arctic territory belonging to Denmark, is suddenly the centerpiece of Trump's foreign delusion. This started when Stephen Miller, Trump's senior advisor and self-appointed architect of every authoritarian impulse in that administration, went on national television and declared that the formal position of the U.S. government is that Greenland should belong to the United States. He didn't say it was an idea. He didn't say it was a fantasy. He said it was policy. When CNN's Jake Tapper pressed him asking if military action against Greenland was off the table, Miller refused to rule it out. Instead, he lectured Tapper about how Denmark had no right to claim Greenland and called it a colony. Then he argued that since the U.S. was the power of NATO, it was only natural that America should secure the Arctic region and protect NATO interests by taking control of Greenland. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was the language of empire delivered with a smirk by a man who treats the world like it's still 1890. When Tapper asked again if that meant Trump might use force, Miller dodged. He mocked the question, accused the press of chasing headlines, and smiled like a man who knows exactly how provocative he's being. He refused to say no, and that's all that mattered. Because when an American official refuses to rule out invading a NATO ally's territory, even hypothetically, every diplomat, every soldier, every citizen should pay attention. That's when political strategist Sawyer Hackett stepped in with an analysis that peeled back the curtain on Miller's true role. Hackett revealed that Miller, who officially handles immigration, has been quietly engineering Trump's broader imperialist agenda. He's the one, Hackett says, who resurrected an 18th century law called the Alien Enemies Act, a relic designed for wartime deportations to justify mass expulsions and military actions. He's the one who drafted the secret directive allowing the military to use lethal force against called designated terrorist organizations. He's the one who oversaw the plan to bomb boats in the Caribbean, killing civilians under the guise of anti-trafficking operations. And he's the one who laid the groundwork for the campaign to remove Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Now, with Maduro gone, Miller's influence has exploded. He's become the public face of a disturbing doctrine, one that mixes nationalism, militarism, and pure opportunism. He's floated ideas of invading Cuba, Colombia, Mexico, Iran, and now Greenland. And he said it clearly. Nobody is going to fight the United States militarily over Greenland. That's the arrogance of a man who believes power alone grants permission. But this time, that arrogance broke something inside the Republican Party. Because for all their loyalty to Trump, many GOP lawmakers know that turning allies into enemies is suicide. And for the first time in years, they said it out loud. Senator Lisa Murkowski warned that any attempt to claim Greenland by force would degrade both our national security and our international relationships. She didn't mince words. She called it what it is: reckless, destabilizing, and un-American. Representative Blake Moore of Utah went further, calling the saber-rattling needlessly dangerous. He reminded the public that Denmark is a NATO ally and that an attack on Greenland would be an attack on NATO itself. Imagine that, American lawmakers warning their own president that he's flirting with starting a war inside the alliance. Representative Don Bacon, a veteran and a man who knows the cost of war, slammed Stephen Miller directly. He called Miller's comments dumb and said respect must be shown to Denmark and Greenland. They are our allies, Bacon said. You don't talk about using force against allies. Speaker Mike Johnson, usually cautious to the point of invisibility, even stepped forward. When asked about the idea of intervention, he said bluntly, "No, I don't think that's appropriate. That's Republican speak for absolutely insane." And Representative Mike Lawler went on Fox News to make the divide unmistakable. He said, "I don't think there's any support for using military force to take Greenland." He acknowledged the island's strategic importance, NATO, the Arctic, countering Russia, but drew the line at violence. Diplomacy, yes. Negotiation, maybe. Invasion, never. In plain English, Trump's fantasy has become too toxic even for his own party. This is what happens when nationalism eats itself. The same rhetoric Trump used for years to attack immigrants and international agreements has now turned inward, threatening America's own alliances. He built a movement on America first, but under his leadership, America alone is what it's becoming. Republicans see it. NATO sees it. The world sees it. They see a former president surrounded by enablers who talk like imperialists but think like arsonists, ready to burn everything down for the illusion of power. They see Stephen Miller, a man with no military experience, no diplomatic training, no accountability, whispering into Trump's ear, feeding his paranoia and rage. They see Trump himself, unraveling in real time, desperate to look strong, clinging to a fantasy where seizing land makes him a statesman instead of a showman who's run out of shows. Even the GOP's conservative think tanks have begun to distance themselves quietly. They know what a Greenland annexation headline would do to global markets, to NATO credibility, to the Arctic Council, to U.S. defense partnerships. They know that kind of talk turns allies into adversaries overnight. And yet, Miller keeps talking. Trump keeps nodding. The cult keeps cheering. But something is shifting, you can feel it. When Republican senators start warning that Trump's threats undermine national security, when GOP congressmen start saying attack on NATO, when Fox News hosts start asking uncomfortable questions instead of serving talking points that's not just noise. That's fear. Fear that Trump's imperial delusions could turn into an actual crisis. Fear that the U.S. could fracture NATO from within. Fear that history will remember them not as conservatives, but as accomplices. This isn't about Greenland anymore. It's about the point of no return. Because if a former president, or anyone, can talk openly about using military force to seize territory from an ally, and his party doesn't stop him, then the post-World War II order collapses. The idea of collective defense dies. The line between democracy and dictatorship dissolves. And that's why this backlash matters. It's not heroism. It's survival instinct. But for once, that instinct might actually save something worth keeping. Here's the reality they're finally admitting out loud. America's power doesn't come from grabbing land. It comes from keeping promises, from alliances built on trust, not fear, from understanding that strength without restraint is just chaos in a uniform. Trump doesn't understand that. Miller doesn't believe that. And that's why their empire is crumbling before it's even begun. We are anonymous. We've seen this pattern before. Leaders drunk on power, surrounded by flatterers, convinced the world is theirs to reshape, until the moment their own people refuse to march. So to every citizen, soldier, and lawmaker watching this, remember what silence costs. Every war starts with words someone was too afraid to challenge. Share this story. Speak it out loud. Ask your representatives, Republican or Democrat, one simple question. Do you stand with America's allies, or with a man who threatens them? The time for neutrality is past. We are anonymous. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.